Yeah, good luck getting it right. So, please excuse our dulcet tones.
Yes.
We are at the end of our convention, a week-long convention, and it was
Yes.
a week that we were here because it's not
Um,
officially a week-long thing.
yeah, but
And
so technically finishes tomorrow, but
oh, I guess yeah.
we're definitely going home today.
But then we did start a day or two early with a couple of friendly games in our accommodation. So still a week. I'm
Yes, but we will drop something about that at some point reasonably soon.
Yes, but that will explain the slightly different tone in our voices.
Yes.
We've been projecting
Slightly croaky.
different roleplay systems in live rooms for a little while.
Yes.
And in doing so, and in seeing so many different things being played and how they're played, we thought it might be an idea to sort of sit down and talk about the differences that we think, and maybe the pros and cons or different aspects of running games with maps,
Yep.
battle maps, or with like dry wipe maps.
And miniatures and sort of the
minis.
associated apparel as well.
Yeah, all running them sort of theatre of the mind, and sort of talk about which we prefer, I guess, or what might best suit you if you're preparing to run a game.
Yeah.
Or a campaign.
So I think it's fair to say, or feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I think generally speaking, we both fall into the category of leaning towards theatre of the mind. Is that? I know why that is for me, but for you, is that more? So am I mistaken in thinking that is the case for you?
Truthfully, I do both because I do some online stuff, which is maps, and some of the systems I run do require that for battles and stuff. But I think I do prefer theatre of the mind, or I might have a map for sort of that might give like general room proportions. If we're running Alien, for example, there might be a map of a spaceship there. It doesn't go down to like movement and player tokens. It's more of like a vibe setter than an actual.
Just so we sort of, or you can just sort of base it on the size of Joe's dining room, which
infamous in the role playing community is Joe's dining room.
How many Joe's dining rooms is it?
Yes, yeah.
That's the metric by which our Monday night group measures more or less everything.
Yeah, it fits quite nicely as well, actually. So yeah, I guess I kind of use all of them, but I do prefer theatre of the mind.
Yeah,
for lots of different reasons. One of which is actually prep time.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of mentioned the use of it in online spaces and things, which for me would sort of perhaps change my perspective entirely. So I think maybe it's best to sort of park the use of it online for a different conversation.
Let me say one more thing on that then. Not all online sessions require maps, and there are some virtual tabletops like Alchemy, which will give really nice backdrops and moving art behind, and you can run games. I've played in games of Outgunned, and I've looked at running Vaesen online, and it's something. It's a VTT I'm considering because it's got mood setting, art, and imagery, without having necessarily to do. They do have a battle map feature, but there's the artwork side they have is probably the best presented. Scenes is what they're called, and VTTs, where you can just immerse yourself in the vibe of it, right? So there's room for both.
Yeah, but I think that's a sort of slightly wider conversation than necessarily what we're getting here. So I think if we focus in on sort of in-person games and things like that for now. So you mentioned that prep time is significantly.
Do you want me to scare people?
Oh, go on, scare people.
Dragonbane, the secret of the Dragon Emperor campaign. Mm-hmm. I printed out all the maps from Free League. One of the scenarios, one of the quest locations, required 36 A4 pages to be sellotaped together and then cut out, because it was a warren of caves where there were particular things in there and you could get lost in it. And that, to be honest with you, prepping that campaign probably took just as long as the entire campaign. It was a long campaign as well. It was 12 weeks of 3-hour sessions, and we didn't do everything, but that took a long time. I've also paid to have A3 maps printed when I have digital assets and stuff. So there's costs involved as well.
So yeah, I mean, you know, I think the sort of takeaway from that is that generally, obviously, well, I would hope it would be obvious that the prep time for maps and minis is going to be significantly higher. Even so, there's sort of a middle ground, I suppose, in the idea of having sort of things to draw at the table as and when people sort of looser maps sort of drawn on. I saw a product that I've never seen before at this con, which I'm severely tempted by. So it's a disposable whiteboard roll. I saw it was like a chap with a giant roll of cling film type affair, and he sort of rolled out a blank whiteboard sheet designed to be sort of chucked away afterwards with grid squares on it. I've never seen that before, and I was like, that's quite a tempting proposition. But then I thought sort of the amount of them that I would get through.
Yeah.
And you know, because I'm, you know, a dirty hippie.
Not dirty.
No. You know, my immediate thought sort of went to, that's a big sheet of plastic that you're going to use once, and sort of ecologically, I would struggle to. I don't know. Maybe they're sort of biodegradable eco things. But,
they won't be.
Well, but you know, so that was, you know, the idea of sort of having something on hand where you can do a quick.
But you can get like those maps that are wipeable.
Yes.
And rollable for anywhere. Good ones probably just over 30 quid. One side will have hexes, the other side will have squares on them.
Yeah.
Bring it with you. You can fold it down and pop it out, and it does a plenty good job.
So I suppose the point is that there is sort of a middle ground between, you know, printing off 36 sheets of
That's
A4
my cope, though. I might have mentioned that already, but I'll read the book and everything and feel confident going into a campaign, and then the week beforehand I will immediately look for every single piece of stationery and gimmick I can find and feel like I'm contributing to what will come. Invariably, I'm not. I'm just busying my mind until it starts.
Given that you are currently sat next to my extraordinarily large box of random tat that I cart with me to every GM session. I can be, you know, I think I can sympathise with that idea.
Yeah.
But so prep time, in a general sense, you're going to be spending a lot more if you're working with maps and miniatures. If you're working with the 3-dimensional maps and miniatures.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to how much you enjoy that stuff. So whether your hobby is in miniature painting and crafting, how much time you have to give the hobby, because it might be that you have lots of miniatures that you've painted from previous years and you have them in your house, therefore you only have to worry and think about the environment. Is that too much or not? So there's lots of things it comes down to, but I'd encourage people to go theatre of the mind because it's low barrier to entry. Once you have your scenario, you could sit down for a couple of hours if you're focused, an evening if you're not, and you can make some notes across each of those locations and be able to paint that picture as you play.
I mean, you know, you also know yourself, right? You know if you're the kind of person that is going to sort of favour the very specific layout, if you're using a sort of a system that has very sort of strict rules on sort of where you're going and what you're doing, takes and tries to take into consideration ranges and things like that. You need to pay attention to that sort of thing.
Interestingly, more and more new systems that are coming out, there's a trend where ranges are going into zones, which is quite nice because it allows you as if you have a map, right, you can just divvy it up and say, right, this is one zone, this is. But if you're theatre of the mind, you can descriptively still deal with.
Yeah, you can say,
as long as people are clear on where they are.
Yeah.
Which you'd have to make sure they were. But yeah, then I guess the next thing it would probably depend on is where you're gaming. So what the setup is like. If you've got loads of room, and also the people at the table.
Yeah.
Some people, like we've spoken about previously, some people prefer different types of games. If a game is crunchier, it probably lends itself more to maps and things like that, because people are approaching it from like a board game or more mechanical aspect, maybe. What do you think about
that? Yeah, I think that's generally right. I think I'm inclined to sort of say that the style of the GM would sort of, generally speaking for me, trump the preference of the table in regards to, at the very least in regards to maps and miniatures.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, definitely.
But you, like I said, you do have to consider the table. And if you have some people in there, sort of, we all kind of, it's the Apple test. Are you familiar with the Apple test?
Yeah. No.
Sorry. So for those of you, including Tom, that don't know, the Apple test is how many you imagine an apple, and then there's a picture of sort of a variety of different apples in front of you. Some of them are clearer, some of them are in black and white and a little bit hazy and things like that. And you could sort of say, at what point do you sort of, when you envisage an apple in your mind, where do you find...
Where do you land?
Like, what sort of does your apple look like? Some people can imagine, you know, a whole apple or a bushel of apples even, and, you know, and other people can't imagine an apple at all. Right, so different strokes. There's no right or wrong thing there. It's different strokes for different folks. But if you're at a table where you've got a lot of people that can't imagine an apple, obviously theatre of the mind is going to be a lot more difficult for them to engage with.
Or you're going to have to be more descriptive.
Or you're going to have to dip into
if everybody wants to develop that style of play, maybe.
Yeah. Equally, if you're sort of plotting everything out, I suppose it doesn't necessarily work as... It's not necessarily as much of a problem going in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So if somebody's really good at imagining, having that sort of map in front of them is going to perhaps improve
maybe
their experience, or maybe they will find it restrictive.
Prescriptive.
Yeah. I mean, we've spoken before about, you know, you said earlier about toilets.
Did I?
Yeah. It's all right. We're very tired.
Yeah.
So
on battle maps.
On battle maps.
Thank you. Yeah. So we were discussing why no role-playing maps have toilets. And that's just generally speaking because nobody's really interested in role-playing in bathrooms, or it just takes up more table space, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, unless you've got something particular that you want to deal with toilets, you'll find every time you draw a map of a house, you draw all the rooms and you go, I have forgotten the toilet, or the bathroom. So yeah, and that's important because I guess going through the whether you're thinking about the use of having maps or not having maps, you also need to think about the use of your language and your description, because if you have a map of, I will always go back to one of 3 or 4 systems, but this one is like aliens. If I'm doing theatre of the mind, that gives me an IP-based system, takes away some of the heavy lifting, because people have evocative moments that they can see in their mind's eye. And if you don't have an IP-based system, then you have got to do a bit more heavy lifting as a GM, because you've got to make sure that you describe it. And you taught me something that I use or I try to use, if I can remember, when I'm describing stuff, which is based on senses. So why don't you just explain that conversation that you had with me?
I think, so for me, I find, so I tend to do exclusively theatre of the mind. but I will sort of have a bit of paper to hand just in case my sort of descriptive.
I remember a rat race in the sewers that wasn't theatre at the moment.
No, that was true. So I did a rat race game, little people running through, sort of tricking out rats to sort of race through the sewers.
Yeah, I think Fast and the Furious.
Yeah,
It wasn't, but.
And yeah, I did have a map for that.
But that was one event, and you had. I think you probably had some quite clear things of some bits you wanted to improve.
Yeah, and I think I sort of. I think I might have just got bored and drawn the map, and then I think I might have done that the other way around.
Okay.
Right? I think I got bored and drew a map. And then I was like, how can I fit this into...
the game.
No, actually, I tell a lie. I know exactly what it was.
Yeah.
We bought one of those rolls of paper.
Right, it's almost like a wallpaper roll.
Yeah,
like a
the lining paper for the boys, because they my children sort of were at a doodly age, and we sort of had that like one of those on the wall in front of a little desk that they could kind of just scribble on as they unrolled, and would sort of tear bits off as and when. I thought you could, and I thought it'd be cool to sort of draw.
It was cool.
Like a sort of a rolling map.
And you did unroll it and reveal more.
Yeah,
It was very engaging at the table.
Yeah, so it sort of this is going to be a stretch, but there was like those sort of little toys that clearly just had like a rolling roadway in the thing, and you sort of position your little car or your little dude or whatever sort of in the middle. It was sort of that was where my mind went.
Yeah.
And I made that first.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, what can I do to sort of fit around this? Which is tends to be how I produce games in general. I will see something and I'll go, oh, that's a fun idea. I'd like to make that.
Yeah.
And if I can't, and sort of how I'll sort of figure out how I can kind of fit that into a productive form or something that's going to be sort of use elsewhere. Because, you know, I can't just make things for the fun of it. It has to be of use. I think that's just, you know, that's, I think, why we ended up doing the podcast, isn't it? I couldn't... We couldn't bring ourselves just to come around and have a cup of tea with each other. It had to be of use, so we decided.
No, I don't know. You're my most regular tea drinking companion, other than my wife and children and dog, which is, you know, you're held in high esteem for that sort of thing. Yeah, so there's definitely a difference in approach with language. Yeah. Let's get back to the senses.
Oh yes, sorry. That was a very long tangent. I do apologise. So yeah, so I tend to sort of, aside from the occasional kind of sort of font of inspiration, I will tend to do theatre of the mind exclusively. And something that I've found sort of from a language point of view that kind of helps buy in people, it is that people sort of tend to concentrate on the look of a place. I find that if you can try and get at least one other sense, the more the better, but obviously you don't want to kind of linger too long on descriptions, especially if you're in a limited time scenario.
Yeah. You don't want monologues every time you open a door.
Yeah. So I tend to focus in on at least one other sense to pull people in.
Okay.
Right. So, you know, maybe, for example, you're walking into a nightclub.
Okay.
Right. You can sort of describe the lights that people see, the sort of the music that's sort of coming out. You can describe just the kind of, even if you just sort of describe the proprioception of just having so many bodies, other bodies near you, right? So that, you know, you don't, sort of you don't even have to rely on the traditional 5 senses.
Yeah.
You can sort of explore some of the other sort of, and especially if your game is perhaps a little bit more magical.
Yeah.
Or has sort of psionic powers, you can maybe describe the
interpretations of those.
Yeah, you can sort of interpret those as sort of senses that people will have, and you can say you step in here, you can feel the radiation of magic,
the winds of magic swirling around.
Exactly. So you know, if just concentrating on say sort of 2 or 3 senses rather than the single one can really it's a pretty good buy-in for so I mean we've spoken about death and stuff and sort of accidents and things previously. I think it's important for me to try and be as clear as possible, but obviously when you're running theatre of the mind, you're relying on people to sort of have a similar understanding of your that you have in your head for what they see in theirs, which aren't necessarily going to be sort of married up.
Yeah, they're going to see an apple, but it might not necessarily be a Red Delicious.
Yes, exactly. It might be a baking apple or a crab apple or something along those lines. I think we're concentrating too much on apples. But obviously you'll have less of that with maps and minis. So that's the kind of payoff that you're getting with maps and minis and things like that. Is that you know the certainly at the very least the layout of doors and windows and sort of scenery is already there. But obviously if I don't make it abundantly clear that there's a stonking great cliff,
then immediately people can get sort of jerked out of that image in their brain. And go, well, that's not what I'm seeing.
And then sort of, you know, somebody will go off in one direction and you'll say, well, you're going to fall off the cliff. What cliff are you talking about? So how do you sort of mitigate that, or how do you, because my experience is that backpedaling always slows down momentum within the what's it. So how do you tend to sort of
unless it's like crucial to the plot, if people want to add to the scene that I've created, that I might take their idea and suggest a slight alteration to make sure it's fitting for what we're doing. So you know, rather than grabbing a fire extinguisher, maybe they're able to grab a fire blanket, or maybe they're able to grab the Coke dispenser from behind the bar, which you could use to stop a fire, because in the Cyberpunk future, fire safety is not maybe the most prioritized thing, but they do have cola and all these things from the corporation. So you sort of like, you can sort of, with that one person, very quickly collaborate to something that would work. Apart from that, if people want to add things in, as long as it's not like totally against the picture, then for me, you let them, because if you're doing theatre of the mind, you pretty much aren't going to guarantee, you're not going to be able to paint the picture perfectly the same way to every detail for every player. It's collaborative.
Right.
So when people want to be collaborative and say, is there a metal pole, then I will turn around and say, yeah, well, there's one by the hearth for working the coals or the peat. You know, what sort of metal pole are you looking for? Do you want to rip a bit of a radiator off the wall, or whatever it is, depending on your setting? And by doing that, you also then have your table that you sat at or online, working together and painting the picture
of the world and
the world as a group. And you also open yourself up to some really cool things, because very often when people say, is there a metal pole somewhere, what they're actually saying is, I want to do something amazing with a metal pole. If you say there is, then you get the amazing thing that they have in their mind, and that's sort of like the peaks of excitement through those.
I think some GMs aren't as keen to sort of hand over the reins of the world to their players. And do sort of player-facing collaborative stuff. But I mean, collaboration is important. I think sometimes for me it will depend on what setting we're in. If you're in a kitchen, in a commercial kitchen, and somebody wants a fire blanket, unless this is a really dodgy, like not meeting health and safety standards,
or a mafia joint,
then there is definitely going to be a fire blanket somewhere. It might be that for one reason or another, their access to it is somewhat limited at the moment.
Or if it's scummy place, they might pull it out and see that it's already been used before. It's just been sort of folded up and put back in the packaging.
Yeah, or something like that. Or so a fire blanket will probably be in a commercial kitchen.
Yeah.
So I tend to give people that. But if people want a gun
in the kitchen,
then that's going to be a stretch. Probably not going to be there. Sure. If there's something in between, so
a flambe Bunsen burner.
Yes, exactly.
That's your
right. That's something, and I might say it's perfectly reasonable that might be in a kitchen, in a commercial kitchen, but it's loose and it's sort of unlikely enough that I want you to make some sort of luck roll or some sort of check to get that in.
Yeah, observation, perception, whatever.
But I think talking about the idea of having these kind of things in place, I think one of the things that I've sort of noticed in games where I have played with maps and minis and things like that, if you're looking for sometimes if you're looking for a fire blanket or a flambe thing or a gun, if I've noticed with some players, if it's not directly on the map, sometimes they can sort of assume that it's not there and not have the confidence to ask for it. I think that comes down to individual players and things like that.
I think I've had that experience as well, and with different people around the table for sure. But different people will interpret the map you put down to different degrees of seriousness. Not really not seriousness, but this is it. This is what this room looks like, or this is a representation of this room. And we're going to role play in the room. There was a game of Alien that we played when there was a bookcase and there was one red book in the bookcase, and it wasn't until somebody said, I want to check this bookcase and see if there's anything strange about it, and they made the roll or whatever, and they were successful, and I pointed to this little red ink mark amongst all the other sort of brown, so it was fairly well blended, and the table went, oh, there is a red brick there, and that's quite a nice payoff, because you can go, maybe there are things on this map. It's not.
So I mean, so that's something that we've not sort of
but there
spoken
could be
about.
hidden details on the map for people to look for.
So maybe if you sort of look at, I mean, that's something that I've not really. I mean, I was in that game, so I do remember that particular bit. But I think maybe that's something that I've not really encountered. Where like actually, if you look at the map from a high vantage point, perhaps if you're playing Cthulhu or
something investigative, maybe.
If you look at the map, or certainly in a spiritual sense, you stand up and you realise if you look carefully enough,
there are details here.
That there, or
maybe not all the details,
or that the map is, if you sort of look at it in the right way, is laid out like a pentagram, or something like that, which you could find out as a through roleplay and things like that.
They're almost like Easter eggs,
right? But equally, I think if as a player, I would expect as a player, if I saw that on the map, if I made that connection as a player myself, and the GM was aware of that too, because the GM might have brought the map from somewhere else, and the GM was aware of that too, I'd be like, I've seen this, and the GM would be like, ha, there we go, that's a thing for you as a player, and now your character knows it.
That was my intention. So if anybody saw the red book, there would have been no roll. But because the way that character or the player approached it was, I just want to check over the bookshelf and see anything, then I said, okay, make a roll for it. And then I was able to sort of zoom in on that, what was probably 5 by 2 millimeter bit on an A3 map, or something ridiculously small. But that just happened because that was in my the week leading up to, I'm sure, let's go into super detail on the maps and add bits and pieces, because with that one, that particular map had lots of environmental storytelling and changing aspects. If you remember what was underneath that layer, there was this. It was an alien game, and there was this sort of Weyland-Yutani thing going on underneath this mining facility. And so I like to explore different ideas when I run my games.
Yeah.
So that one was about the structure of the campaign and also storytelling through the map. I always sort of like to chuck in a couple of experimental.
But it's sort of like when I did that sort of map we were talking about, the rolling map.
Yeah, that's the same idea.
A few was like, there was a few sort of little kind of cheeky nods and Easter eggs and things like that, which sort of, and I had sort of, there were some very cheeky ones. You were going through a sewer.
Yeah, we won't go into the details.
Yeah, we won't go into the.
We'll spare you the noises, but it was both comical and sewer-like.
Yes.
But yeah, it was that was another very good example of sometimes when you're writing these things, you have an idea come into your mind and you just have to go and explore it for a bit.
Yeah.
And then at the end you can look back and go, yeah, that works. Let's keep that.
And I think. Obviously, pre-written scenarios and things like that might have a sort of element of that being able to happen.
Yeah.
Or if you're lucky enough that you're in a position where you can create sort of detailed maps like that for your game, that's definitely a sort of a clever use of a tool.
Yeah, if you had at the time for that one, I had a bit of time leading up to it, so I was able to. And the buy-in afterwards, everybody sort of pulls the chair in a little bit and looks a bit closer, and you can see people leaning in, and it just really. It's a and really
then once they find one, they're like, okay, maybe there's some others.
Yeah. Where are the rest of the books? There were no more books in that one.
With that, I'm just suddenly reminded of like your sort of. 60s and 70s cartoons where like you knew the branch that was about to be cut or the sort of door that was about to be opened.
Just the quality of the drawing was slightly different.
There was a significant difference in the sort of shading of the thing that was about to be utilised.
Yeah, very much the case. Yeah. It's sort of that 2D background, and then the bit that the animator was going to change in front of it. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's very much that sort of idea. So then let's sort of step back. So we've discussed, I guess, theatre of the mind, and we've discussed maps. A couple of tips, maybe on making some hidden details in the maps if you have time. If you're theatre of the mind, then maybe looking at sort of descriptive language and how you use that. If you want to be IP related, then it sort of takes away some of the weight of all that kind of stuff. So I guess what kind of systems, if we think of like the more popular systems, maybe a couple each, maybe what would you recommend for each? If we have a box of map and a box of theatre of the mind, what's one or two systems that you'd pop in both for you as a player?
For me as a player or a GM, I think so. The elephant in the room for me is D&D. I prefer. Simply because so many mechanics are dependent on strict distances and sort of strict ranges and things like that. It depends on your style as a GM, because obviously you could be a little bit more loosey-goosey with some of those things. You could be happy to fudge.
What about you though?
But I prefer doing that on some sort of map.
Okay.
Which is perhaps why I tend to run D&D less, because because I think it works better, even if it's just like you say, one of those sort of hexed boxes, and you just have people in the middle, have sort of representations of characters in the middle of it. I think if a system has strict rules and strict on movement and distance and things, inherently that's going to be.
That's the expectation for the player, is that being About, what about a map? What about a theatre of the mind one then?
Theatre of the mind. I think anything that's sort of vibe based.
Name a system, David.
Vibes is a system. I've played it twice. Yeah, MacGuffin and Co. It's coming out at some point soon. I think.
Very true.
So, no.
Okay, survives. Okay, that's a deep cut.
No, but so something like Roll for Shoes or Fate. I mean, Fate will use zones.
Yeah.
So, maybe a map can work with Fate, but zones is perfectly acceptable to sort of run theatre of the mind. Something more narrative based, that, like I say, so Roll for Shoes and Fate, I will put definitely for me in the theatre of the mind column.
Cool. Maps for me. I think I would say Shadow Dark because it's very killy.
Yeah.
So I think there's something to be said there for if you have quite a dangerous or highly thought system that in order for people not to feel bad, then you need to be reasonably
that's it. And similarly for me with G&D, because if somebody says you get caught in this fireball, and you for all intents and purposes were sort of sat there very smug that you wouldn't, and you get caught into it anyway.
Oh no, I was behind the rock.
Then
this cavern is open.
Then that sort of
that feels bad.
You get a bit of the old sort of playground, double tag. You can't double tag.
No tag backs.
Yeah.
I guess changing the genre a bit. Cyberpunk I put in maps as well.
Yeah.
Its combat's crunchy and can take a bit of time actually. So you have to be, in order to minimise that. And allow people to know what they want to do, showing them a good representation of where they are in terms of distances and stuff is important. Theatre of the mind stuff, I would I'll cheat slightly and say horror, because the fewer details you can give in any horror system, the better. When you want to obviously describe what you're looking at, but you also want to describe what your players can't see.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about if we put sort of Cthulhu and stuff into there,
Vaesen,
a lot of the sort of the horror is leaving it to people's imagination.
Yeah, it's the unknown, right?
Yeah,
it's the thing
so
you don't know what they are.
And sort of this is this thing was made of colours hitherto seen by human eyes, kind of thing, and you're like, oh shit, I'm in a situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anything massively revelation based, or all that kind of stuff. Investigative stuff for sure as well. I think like we say, Cthulhu.
I think maybe investigation stuff could go either way, right?
Yeah, probably.
It depends on. I think that like investigation heavy stuff could sort of.
Where would you put Dresden Files?
So we played Dresden Files, but that's Fate. So that was run for us.
If you had the time, so we played it and we went to a theatre where a murder had happened or somebody had died. If you had the time to make that map with the scene of crime markers on there and the points of interest, that could be really compelling as a table to really sort of lean in and go, right, what is on this map? Let's look over this and pore over this. That could be really compelling.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't,
but again, so with the way that was kind of run for us as well, there were sort of some hidden sigil situations in the which again brings us back to that kind of, you can layer these into the the map.
When I say if you don't, I mean if you don't have the time to do the map justice.
Yeah.
If you want to do it with theatre in mind, I think that's perfectly acceptable. And actually, when there are like layers like you're describing, it can be really nice. But my concern for something like that would be if the map was somewhere in the middle. So you're saying to the players, like, you have that sort of, is this everything or isn't this everything? And you're actively investigating.
Now, and this might dip into a little bit of controversy, because one of the things, especially for home games, and sort of things that you've done yourself, not things that you're ever going to sell. One of the things that I think would be good to do with AI art generation is you could feed that into that, because I think the way that a lot of maps are is that, especially the home written one, or like the ones that are for sale, certainly the ones that are for sale that aren't AI that I'd like to buy, because obviously buying AI art not the best. You kind of have to buy the art for a map separately that is perhaps designed for another scenario or another thing like that, and sort of repurpose it for yours. Whereas I think perhaps there's certainly something to be said for some in sort of taking an AI map or creating an AI map and saying, you know, I'd like this, and here, because not everybody's going to have the skill or the patience.
To if kind it's like an accessibility thing, then I think that's fine. But online, you can do that with virtual tabletops and tokens. You can buy tokens that are specific to stuff or not specific to stuff, and then creating your own map. So you can have like the background of like the battle map or the background of whatever. You stick that on, and you can start layering items on top of it, and you can do environmental storytelling that way. But maybe we sort of are getting caught up in the weeds on this. Yeah,
but I think generally speaking, when it comes to systems, it sounds very much like we've ended up in the sort of distinction between narrative and sort of crunchy mechanics again.
Yeah, I think probably you're right.
I think if it's got crunchy mechanics, if whether you're 5 foot or 10 foot away from somebody is going to make a big difference in your mechanics,
or if there's attack of opportunity or stuff like that, right?
Yeah, then maps, I say, even if it's literally just a blank square
or an A4 bit of paper you're drawing as you go.
Yeah, I think that there is definitely the space to have it there. But I think theatre of the mind, if it's fully narrative, collaborative, player-facing game, I think theatre of the mind all the way.
Yeah, I think if it's probably in between those two things, my preference would be theatre.
And you know, but that's not how the internet works, Tom. You can't be on the fence on the internet, Tom.
Fine, I'll get off the fence and I'll get us another drink.
Fine,
go and get it. See you next time for the next interesting topic of discussion.
Yeah, goodbye.
Until then, bye-bye.